Okay, more on corporations. Now, what's been going on here? Well, we have this development, this social form that we call the business corporation, and a number of different things that happened, one of which it grew in size. It got bigger and bigger. It got more assets. It got more people working for it. So you have corporations today which have billions and billions of dollars of assets, and they have hundreds of thousands of people that work for them. And they belong to various associations. And through these mutual associations, they work at gaining similar things. You know, they cooperate with each other. And one of the things about a social form is, and this is really important, let me use an analogy. Let's suppose that you live by a stream. And in the stream, there's this rock. And when there's water flowing through the stream over this rock, you got a wave, right? And the rock's there and it causes the wave. So, right? Now, a social form like a corporation is a bit like that. There's a certain structural element in the social element of the situation. And then there's the wave, that's the form. But the water's constantly moving, even though the form is there. It's not the same water. It's different. So the water is changing, but the form remains. So that's what we have to understand when we think about the social form that's a corporation. The water part of the corporation is the people. Okay? A corporation that's 100 years old doesn't have the same executive officers, the same board of directors, the same workers, and so on and so forth. But the form is still there because the people move through it, and it has certain qualities that make it the certain laws, the same way that laws of gravity and laws of fluid mechanics and so on affect the existence of the wave in the stream. The corporation then is a kind of wave in which people move through it, and the things that impinge on the structure of that, the laws under which it operates, so to speak, the laws that come from the human being in terms of his motives, and the laws that come from the legal systems of the nation states, and now the treaty systems and so on and forth, they affect this form. But the form itself is constant in a kind of way, and the people move through it, and they contribute momentarily during that period of life that they're involved with the structure, with the social form that's a corporation, but they aren't really anything more than the temporary occupant of the form. And if we look at the thing over time, we can see that the form itself, the form of the corporation, as a structure, has emancipated itself to a certain degree even from the people. And this is talked about a little bit, and sometimes in the situation with regard to the discussions, anthropological discussions about corporations. They'll talk about corporate culture, and they'll say, well, there's different cultures in different corporations, and this is true. You have a different culture. Years ago, I was out of work, and I went to Walmart to take some applications, fill out an application, and I found myself spending an hour in a room with 20 other people, all out of work, looking for work, filling out a psychological test that was going to see whether I might smoke marijuana on the job or thieve from the corporation. And this test was created by psychologists hired by the corporation to do whatever they wanted to do in terms of evaluating incoming employees. Now, that existence of that test, that process, is part of the culture of the corporation. And of course, we watch various dramas on TV, and we see a lot of various kinds of things about the culture of corporation, where people are encouraged to lie. And there are some people that think that the way that the culture of these mega corporations, these huge corporations, really only brings it about that people that are psychopaths rise to the top. They have to have no empathy, no normal human empathy, and no conscience in order to make the kinds of decisions that they make. Now, I'm not saying that's totally true or not. I'm just saying that people that look at corporate cultures look at this situation and they realize that people rise to the top in this social form that tend to lose their sort of moral ground. Now, they're still human beings, and we can ask ourselves, well, what has emerged through this process of 300 years or whatever, when corporations were first invented as a kind of association for purposes of contracts and businesses and stuff back in Merry Old England or whatever, and then they slowly emancipated themselves to the state where they are today, these mega corporations, where the form itself is very, very strong and very, very vital and continues. People put money in it, people buy and sell the stocks. As long as it's doing certain kinds of things, in terms of who's ever in the stream of people that flows through the social form at any given moment, as long as they've absorbed the corporate culture, become part of the corporate culture, and continue to display the elements of the corporate culture, the corporation is viable. And of course, one of the elements of corporate cultures that can emerge is an effort to influence Washington, D.C. and other places like this. So corporate cultures reach out into the political environment and try to get an advantage. And there are sometimes a lot of base motives involved in these things. And we also know that sometimes the people that get involved in these things are kind of megalomaniacs. They want to do bad things to other people. And that's very sad, That's really very sad that they want to do bad things to other people. So we have coming into existence, that's a certain type of corporation on the periphery of war zones and stuff like that. These are these corporations which hire mercenaries and such, like Blackwater, or they've changed their name. Basically, these are security corporations. There's a lot of need for security in a world where there's terrorism and where people kidnap corporate officers and hold them for ransom, and all these different things that are done to attack what goes on in a corporation. There's huge needs for security. And so these corporations, which have emancipated themselves from nation states and are becoming more and more a thing unto themselves, are also acquiring private armies. Think about it. They're acquiring private armies. So this corporation, to the extent that it's emancipated itself from various kinds of situation and is becoming more and more this thing that wants to go on into the future, that has a life of its own, that's manifested, hugeness and growth, and developed a corporate culture which seems to continue in spite of the human beings that come through it. The human beings adapt to the culture, and the culture is independent of them. They can't really influence it anymore. So you have these large companies that are emancipated, and they go out there and they exist in the world, and they freed themselves from the limits of nation states, and they're acquiring armies. More